Hey there classy people, this is Josh, the Top Hat Gamer, and this week I'm reviewing Dying Light. What happens when you take the zombie bashing melee of Dead Island and mix in the rooftop freerunning of Mirror's Edge? You get something that looks a lot like this game right here. Dying Light is set in the fictional Middle Eastern city of Haran, where a mysterious viral outbreak has turned the majority of the populace into hyper-aggressive zombies. At this stage, the global relief effort began assisting survivors trapped in the quarantine zone by dropping supplies. You play as Kyle Crane, an operative sent by the GRE to retrieve stolen sensitive documents, but the mission soon becomes complicated as you are bitten and infected as soon as you hit the ground. After being rescued by a conveniently close band of survivors, your objectives become blurred. Do you complete the mission you were sent here for, or do you help the survivors that saved you? There's no actual choice here, and the story is pretty standard. You've got your zombie apocalypse, you've got your shady government organizations, and I'm not gonna lie, eventually the plan is to carpet bomb the city to end the outbreak. Everything, right down to the main character, are bland and overdone, and it's hard to care about the twists and turns that the story tries to throw your way. Underwhelming story aside, the game looks quite nice and plays really well. Dying Light's color palette utilizes a lot of brown, but it's not without a few dashes of color here and there. Character models look good, even if there's a lack of variety to be found, and the progressive damage that you can inflict onto zombies is visually impressive. The game's soundtrack can barely be heard over the screams of the undead and the thumping of your own footsteps, and I think that gives the game a tense atmosphere, even if it's not necessarily scary. If you want to talk scary atmosphere though, just look at the game's nighttime sections. The darkness in this game is pitch black, and the flashlight, while useful, gives you a limited range. It effectively turns this tense but fast-feeling game into an experience that fills me with dread. When you talk about Dying Light's gameplay, it's hard to ignore the game's very obvious Dead Island roots. One of the main focuses of the gameplay is on melee combat and collecting and upgrading better gear. The combat is visceral and satisfying, but lacks a certain level of control that could be found in the game's spiritual predecessor. You can't control the direction of your attacks, which makes the combat feel that much more repetitive as you're just spamming the attack button. As the game goes on and you get better moves and weapons, the combat starts to feel more exciting. Drop-kicking zombies or vaulting off of one shambler into a horde of them feels awesome. It's just a shame that you have to break through the repetition wall before you get there. My biggest issue with the melee combat is how annoying human enemies can be to deal with. Fighting them becomes a chore as they dodge and deflect your hits with no discernible pattern. They aren't challenging, they're just annoying. The game really shines for me in its other main focus, which is freerunning. While not on the same level as a dedicated parkour game like Mirror's Edge, the world traversal is fast and satisfying, and like the combat, only gets better the more you unlock. You begin barely able to drag yourself over ledges and not being able to survive a very long fall, but a few upgrades here and there will have you leaping off of zombies and onto rooftops, sliding under fences, and surviving huge drops by rolling as you land. The surprisingly large open world of Dying Light is constructed around your ability to climb and run almost anywhere, and as such, there are spots that basically act as haystacks in Assassin's Creed. Generously scattered garbage piles, cars, or wooden awnings can break your fall, and it's a great way to make it to the ground level without stopping the game's flow. The game can be quite difficult in the beginning, where it's easy to get overwhelmed if you're not careful, but as your skills grow, the zombie horde becomes easier to manage. I've mentioned that you have unlockable skills and upgrades, and they're split into 3 trees. Your agility skill dictates how well you freerun, and you gain experience for it by actually freerunning. Your power skill allows you to upgrade combat abilities, and experience comes from fighting. The last tree is your survivor tree, and it contains the skills that don't fit into the other 2. Bartering and crafting skills are found here, and the experience for this is earned by completing missions. Gaining experience by doing the relevant activity is a great way of building your character. If you prefer running to fighting, then obviously your agility skill will be better than your combat, and vice versa. Dying Light's titular gameplay mechanic is the difference between night and day, and the early game emphasizes this greatly. Not only is it dark as hell, there are far stronger zombies that appear only at night that are fast and vicious. The game changes from a fast-paced action game to a tense stealth game as you run and weave your way around these volatiles, and the greater risk you face is rewarded with double experience in both power and agility. It's a good risk-reward trade-off, but in the later game its difficulty is laughably irrelevant. It's hard for me to look at Dying Light and not see the parts that make up the whole. The very clear Dead Island feeling, its Mirror's Edge style freerunning, the myriad of special zombies lifted wholesale from Left 4 Dead, Dead Space, and even the Blade movies, Dying Light is not the most original game out there. If nothing else, the game features a decent amount of content outside of the main story missions. There are plenty of side missions to complete and challenges to take on. There are also a number of safe houses to unlock by clearing out zombies and restoring power, which provide you with a way to skip from night to day and vice versa. And even if that's not your style, the core gameplay is fun enough by itself that I found myself wasting time just running around the world or beating up zombies for hours on end. On top of the surprising amount of content, you can play co-op with a buddy or three, so that's pretty cool. Dying Light gets the Top Hat Gamer rating of good. Its sheer unoriginality aside, Dying Light provides smooth and satisfying combat and free-running mechanics that only get better as the game progresses, and it doesn't look half bad while doing it either. Its story is unfortunately pretty bland, but the action should keep you entertained far past the main mission's ending. If you're a fan of Dead Island or zombie stuff in general, I recommend giving this one a look.